Introducing new dirty drinks from Sonic. Whatever your fave is, you can now make it dirty. Fanta fans can make it dirty. Dr. Pepper devotees can make it dirty. Even ocean water aficionados can make it dirty. You name it, we can make it dirty. Now you may be asking yourself, how do you make a Sonic drink dirty? By infusing it with a delicious blend of coconut flavor, sweet cream, and lime, of course. What were you thinking? Get your brain out of the gutter. New dirty drinks, now at Sonic. Fanta and Dr. Pepper are used under license. Limited time only at participating Sonic drive-ins.
Hi guys, quick one before we get into the episode. This episode is sponsored by Zencastr, which is the production suite that I've used from the very beginning of this podcast. And if you're interested in starting your own podcast, hang around at the end of the episode for our 30% discount referral code. Thanks.
So our podcast is called Right and Wrong.
Are these your notes?
These
Are these your notes about what we're going to say?
Anything.
Nailed it.
It's a short answer.
So how many novels did you not finish?
Oh my god, so many.
It was perfect. What's she talking about? This is nonsense.
Ooh, a spicy question. I love it.
This is it, guys. The big secret to getting published is you have to write a good book. You heard it here first. Hello, and welcome back to the Right and Wrong podcast. As always, I'm Jamie, and joining me today is the senior editor at Little Tiger Stripes Publishing, Matilda Whitehead. Hello, Matilda.
Hiya. Call me Mattie. Everyone does.
Mattie it is.
Yeah, great. Hi, thanks for having me.
How's it going, Mattie?
Yeah,
Surviving the heat?
just about. But yeah, wanting to just be sitting outside with a book reading.
That'll be nice.
Yeah, I mean,
A nice
fortunately,
ice
that
cream.
is part of my job. So, and yeah, I need to start
Anything's
incorporating
possible.
that more.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you should, 100%. Well, let's kick off with your job, your editorial escapades. You started out at Simon and Schuster for a couple of years, and then moved to Stripes. Is that right?
That's right. So I started at Simon & Schuster. I was interning in the adult nonfiction team,
Mm-hmm.
and then the job came up in the children's department. So I applied for that and was editorial assistant there for about 2.5 years, and then moved to Stripes as junior editor, and I'm now senior editor there. And it's been about 4 years. I've been
Okay.
here. Yeah.
So did you always want to work in children's? When you saw the opportunity, you went for it?
Yeah, I think when I first started out, I didn't quite know where I wanted to be.
Yeah.
But my first experience of publishing was at Random House Children's Books in the editorial department, and I completely loved it. And I think that was my first sort of taste of editorial, of publishing, and it was a very cool one. And then after that, I did sort of anything I could to be working with books. So I was in a bookshop for a bit, and I did internships at a legal publisher, and at a travel guide publisher.
Oh.
So they were all very different, but it was kind of cool because it really confirmed that editing was what I wanted to do. Even with the legal publications, which I didn't understand at all, I still really enjoyed the process.
Okay.
Yeah, and so then then I was in the nonfiction team, and I was enjoying that. A little bit of adult fiction, but mainly on the nonfiction. But it sort of seemed kind of like fate when the job in children's came up, because that was where I started, and now I can't imagine working on any other books.
Oh, well, that's nice. So you and we talked about this before we started recording, but you work at Stripes, but Stripes is sort of it's part of Little Tiger, but Little Tiger is sort of bringing everything under one umbrella. Is that right?
Yeah. So Stripes is the fiction list at Little Tiger, the Little Tiger group, and now so we're sort of the Little Tiger fiction list, but known as Stripes, and still refer to ourselves as Stripes. So just to make it really straightforward. But we publish books for children aged 5 up to YA, so sort of from chapter books onwards.
Mm-hmm.
Which is very cool. So at Simon & Schuster, I was working a bit on the picture book list as well, which was really, really fun. And definitely learnt some things there which have been really useful now just working on fiction.
As an editor, there must be a huge difference between working on a picture book versus prose.
Definitely. Yeah, trying to get so much into those 32 pages in a picture book is it's a sort of challenge, but a very satisfying one. And I'm in awe of all the picture book editors. The way they managed to, I remember reading, so when I was there, Simon & Schuster published Grandad's Island, which is Benji Davies, one of his books. and it is just completely brilliant. And I remember reading it and just absolutely sobbing, and then showing it to my mum, and she was sobbing, and then to my sister, who was like, "Oh, that's nice. Granddad goes on holiday." And it's just the way that a picture book can do so much with so few words, and those gorgeous pieces of artwork, and how it all works together is very special.
Yes. And I guess you mentioned the artwork. As an editor, you're working with two people, the author and the illustrator a lot of the time.
Yeah, it's such a cool thing about this job is that you get to meet so many amazing, talented people, and see what everyone brings to it in such a different way. I love that when you find you have the text and you find that perfect illustrator. And yeah, it's really fun being able to. So we work really closely at Stripes with the designers. It's very collaborative from the beginning. So we will work together to find the perfect illustrator. When the designer has done the brief, we'll go through it and pick out anything that we think we'd like to see in there that they might have missed, or if there's any other details we could add. And then we get to see the roughs and then the finals, and we get to feedback on everything. So yeah, it's really cool. It's a fun side of the job.
Yeah, it must be so nice seeing those projects grow from such a sort of fledgling stage up to their final forms.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and seeing the author's words come to life through the artwork, and yeah, I love being able to share the artwork with the authors and sort of seeing their reaction to it. One of my all my books are my favorite, but one really special one I worked on was called Seven Sisters, which Aisha Malik wrote and then Erica Meza illustrated. And what was so beautiful about that book is that Aisha based all the characters on kids in her own life, and she sent photos and descriptions. I think one of my favorite descriptions was one of the kids was based on a baby that was like a month old. So she was like, it's very long and thin, but so cute. And then Erica illustrated them. So these kids, I mean, they look like the kids, which is amazing. And actually, some of the parents asked Erica if she would sort of do them special prints of them. And I think, when you talk about representation and seeing yourself in a book, it doesn't get more more sort of literal than that. That was a really special project. Yeah.
And it's great to hear you, the excitement in your voice, just reminiscing about an old project. That's so nice to hear. And so talking about your role, senior editor, I think it's one of those roles that it's very easy from the outside to sort of look at that and just laser focus on all you do is edit books. But there's a much larger sort of breadth to that role. What are your other duties outside of the actual sort of literal editorial part?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, one of the things I love about the job is the variety. Obviously, before we get to the editing, we have to find the books. So lots of reading submissions, which is fun. It's also one of those jobs that I think every editor will agree is quite hard to fit into the working day. But luckily, most things we get are really, really good because obviously they've been through agents first.
Yeah.
So lots of reading, and then there's also the contract side. Once you find a book you love and you sort of hopefully, you've pitched to the agent, they've agreed. Doing the contracts, that's been something that's been really interesting. Learning about contracts, how it all works, the different phrasing, the different sub-right splits and all of that. I think that's a really useful skill. Or not useful, useful skill, but also just really helpful to know as an editor, to work out. So you understand where the money's coming from, how it works for the author, how it's the business. So that's quite a key part.
Is it you literally creating these contracts? Do you work with like a legal team to help you with that?
Yeah, we have a contracts manager.
Right.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to be putting them together, but
I was gonna say.
But it's quite fun, it's satisfying, being able to go through the sort of drafts and be able to pick out the different clauses and sort of learn about the wording and where maybe we need to look at it a bit differently. And sometimes it's quite straightforward, and sometimes you end up having negotiations which go on for a long, long time.
In a broad sort of sense, what are the main things that the publisher is after in that contract, and what are the main things that the agent is trying to fight for in that contract?
I think the main things that we look at is I mean, you agree the advanced level when you
Sure.
acquire the book.
Yeah.
So it's looking at all the different royalties and the different sub-right splits. So if you sell to international publishers, or you sell on the rights to someone else, obviously it's trying to balance, make sure the author, gets the royalty that they need and that they obviously deserve for the book. And let me think. So looking at the sub-right splits and the royalties, there's often industry standards. So it's just making sure that the deal is fair, and sort of comparing to other contracts in the list, and wording where so often rights are reserved to the author. So often sort of dramatization and merchandising rights the author will retain. So it's making sure that wording's in there and that's clear.
Right.
And looking at sometimes there's wording about making sure that every deal is run by the author and agent before it's approved. And I think those are the main things. I'd say that's where we sort of generally have the back and forth. Another thing is looking at options. So if the author writes another book in the series, or another book for that readership, sometimes we have an option clause in there, which means that we get a first look. But obviously some authors might not want to commit to that straight away. So all that sort of wording, making sure that the author's sort of covered for any eventuality.
But it's all, I mean, especially with sort of lesser known or debut authors, I imagine it's all pretty industry standard, the contracts there.
Yeah, generally, yeah. And I mean, that's a good thing. So our contracts manager is sort of very aware of industry standard and what's changing. So we're able to keep up with what's happening. Yeah. So for debut, it's generally, and I mean, it depends on the agent as well sometimes, because different agencies will have different standards that they have. And you sort of get used to it. We've got a massive spreadsheet with everyone's royal sort of contract details. So we're able to sort of see where we're at and what, if it's a second book in a series or another book and a new contract with an existing author, sort of matching what we've done with previous ones, or depending on they might want to negotiate slightly different terms, but
Sure.
Lots of negotiation. That's also a key part of the job.
Okay, and that's always with the agents, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move over to picking the books. You get the submissions, and then there's this whole commissioning process. Are almost all of your submissions from agents?
Yeah, we only really see submissions from agents.
Okay.
Just because we get between 5 and 10 a week from agents, and I don't think we could look at any more.
Yeah.
And so quite a lot as it is. So mainly from agents. I went to Bologna Book Fair in 2019 as part of a scouting trip that Daniel Hahn set up with the Art and Council England and Book Trust. And that was amazing. It was for editors to go to sort of meet international publishers and sort of encourage UK editors to be looking a bit wider. And actually since then, so we acquired a finished book from that, and I've been sort of keeping up regular meetings with those international publishers. And so I'd love to find something. I mean, it's not through agents, that's through publishers.
Yeah. That's like a whole different branch of the where that's sort of publishers working with other publishers.
Yeah, because we sell. I mean, UK publishers sell so many rights internationally, and yet we publish so little from other countries. So it's definitely something. We've got a Danish YA coming out next year, and we've got our Finnish series. And I'd love to find more. And I studied Spanish and Latin American studies, so I'd love to find something from Latin America.
That's very cool.
Yeah, I think it's just because when I, in my degree, and I've got family who live in Mexico or lived in Mexico, we read, I loved reading international fiction, translated fiction. And I think it just brings such a different, it's the whole idea of literature being a window into a completely different culture, but also the similarities, which I think are so important. And also to do with empathy, which especially in children's books, I think is so important. I would love to find something. But obviously that brings in the whole, then you have to get translators, and it is a more complicated process, but it's one that we've done a few times now. So I'm hoping we can do some more of.
That's cool. Yeah. And a great way to, as you say, like get sort of diverse voices from all around the world, from all different cultures. So when it comes to the submissions, is it you that's being sent them directly from agents? Are you the sort of one of the first people to read the submissions?
Yeah, so what we generally do, there's 5 of us in the editorial team, and submissions can come into anyone.
Mm-hmm.
And what we do is we share them around as soon as they come in. Sorry, we share them to the team or send them to the team. And then if anyone sees it and thinks, oh, this sounds like it could be for me, they'll take a look. And we have regular meetings to discuss what we've been reading. Often we'll get emails from agents sort of saying that there's been interest in something and it's starting to move. So someone will, jump on that and take a look. And if there's something that I've read and loved, I'll sort of make a note to the team and ask someone else to have a look. And if we, as a team, feel like it's something that would work for us, we then send it to the sales and marketing and rights teams to have a look. And hopefully once we've got them on board, we take it to our publisher and our CEO and sales director and get them to hopefully sign off on it. And then we can offer.
So it's very much chosen by committee. Like you need every department and each person to sort of sign off on it until you can give the yes to the agent and author.
Yeah, it does need to be. I mean, we want the sales team's feedback because if they're the ones that sort of know what's going on, what's selling, what retailers are looking for. So it's really helpful to have their feedback. And then, I mean, we're very fortunate in that we're not an independent publisher anymore because we were bought by Penguin Random House a few years ago, but we still function very much as an independent publisher. We're not affiliated with Penguin Random House UK at all. So we still have that quite small indie feel. And I would say it's, if there's a project that we feel really passionate about, we're generally able to get it through. I mean, there's a process, but obviously
it's a long, complicated process with many cogs.
Yeah, but I'd say it's slightly more informal than, for example, at Simon & Schuster was. I think that's the benefit of being a slightly smaller publisher. And also having worked, lots of people at Little Tiger have been there for years and years, and sort of there's a real feel to the list, and I think a lot of trust, which is really lovely. And there's a trust that if you like it and you're passionate about it, that you'll make it work.
Spin your passion into a business with Shopify and break sales records with the world's best converting checkout. Let's hear that one more time. The world's best converting checkout. Shopify's legendary checkout makes it easier for customers to shop on your website, across social media, and everywhere in between. Now that's music to your ears. Any way you spin it, you can be a smash hit with Shopify. Start your $1 a month trial today at shopify.com/records.
Yeah. Let's get into the nitty-gritty then of the sort of core of your job, the editorial part of it. You mentioned that you receive about 10 submissions. Is that you individually, or the editing team receives 10?
That's the editing team.
Okay.
But I'd say I probably get at least 5, if not more, a week.
Okay. How many books and authors are you usually working with at any one time?
Usually, I mean, I probably over the year work on about between 12, up to 15 books a year. At any one time, maybe, I'm just looking at my to-do list, probably about 8 or 9, because they're all at the different stages. So, yes, I'll be working on first drafts, copy edits, layouts for a text, contracts for books. We've got what we also do at Little Tiger, which is quite a big part of our publishing, is in-house ideas. When we come up with a concept in-house and develop it, and then send out the brief to authors and agents who send in sample writing, and then we pick an author based on that. So it's really fun. I really love it because it's a really creative, it's more sort of using the creative side of your brain to, I mean, it's all creative, but coming up with those ideas and then seeing them become books is really exciting, and having that being able to, part of it is sort of looking at what's doing well for us, what's doing well in the market, what gaps we have, and coming up with ideas to fill those gaps. And so actually Diary of an Accidental Witch, which is one of our series that we launched last year, that was originally an in-house concept. And then Honor and Predator Cargill have it's incredible what they've done. They're such talented writers. And then Katie Saunders has illustrated it. And I worked on that with our editor at the time, Ella Widett, and it was like our baby, seeing this idea that we'd had together and that we'd worked up become these amazing books. It was very exciting.
That's great, because that's something you don't always get in your role as an editor, is it? That sort of creative side of things.
Yeah, I think it's something that I know when I was at SNS we talked about doing it or wanting to do it quite a lot, but it was just it is time consuming, and you sort of have to really put aside the time to do it, and it's not easy, and also it can be quite daunting because you someone puts in a meeting saying new ideas, and you think, I've got to come up with something, like how do I do that?
Yeah.
But actually this year we sort of did a creative day out where we went to loads of bookshops and the Cartoon Museum, and then sat in a park and actually came up with loads of stuff. And it was really fun just as a team to sort of bounce around ideas. And actually we're starting a graphic novels list, which is very exciting.
Yeah.
Or we're looking into graphic novels. And so that's something where we've been trying to come up with some ideas and find some writers and artists. So yeah, that's a really cool part of the job.
Yeah, it sounds nice. And it sounds like you had it sounds like the office culture is very good. These sort of nice day out creative and things like that. And, you're starting a comic book thing. You work from, was it MG up to YA? Or was it 5 up to YA?
From 5, yeah. So from age 5. So from really, some books I work on have 3,000 words and 96 pages, and are mostly, sort of almost full page illustrations, and then others are 90,000 word YA. Quite a range.
Yeah. So I mean, that in itself seems like big, but like then when you go deeper, it's like every story, and you as an editor you'll work closely with the authors. Every person is very unique. Does that mean that you have to like approach every project in a very sort of open and different way?
Definitely, yeah, it is, because each author's different. I think it's something that I think sometimes people forget, is that authors are people. We set these schedules, and then actually stuff happens, life happens, lockdowns happen, and it all becomes, kind of goes out the window a bit. So I think a key part of being an editor is just being really flexible, and like you said, being really open.
Yeah.
Talking, getting to know the authors, finding out what works best for them. Like I worked with Sita Brahmachari on her YA novel When Shadows Fall, and that was such an amazing experience for me as an editor, because Sita is such an experienced writer and so passionate and does so many amazing things with her books, and is also probably the most open author to edits I'd ever met, in that you'd send an edit and you'd get like a whole new manuscript back.
Oh wow.
But then she was saying that she, as an experienced author, will get edits, and you spend so long trying to word your edits in a way that you're used to, sort of softly trying to be nice, and actually Sita was like, just tell me what you want me to do and I'll do it, because I trust you, and we want to do, I spent so long unpicking all the comments, and actually I just want to get to the heart of it, whereas I know other authors do need a bit more hand holding and can feel a little bit like you're pulling the book apart, or that, because obviously you're writing, the whole point of edits is, well, you are celebrating the good, but you're trying to bring out more of it and strip back some stuff that's not working as much. So you don't want it just to be a whole letter of criticism. So actually, I always find writing the editorial letter at the initial, we sort of do a structural edit to begin with.
Yeah.
I always find that really daunting, and it ends up taking me probably the best part of the day to write it, to combine everything in a way that's clear, makes sense, but also isn't too overwhelming, and also feels ultimately positive. I think actually I remember because I think you've spoken to Kezia Lupo,
yes,
and I remember seeing her post something on Twitter about that people don't realize that it's actually really scary for an editor. Like I always have a thing when I read a first draft, and you sort of feel this pressure that you've got to make it better. Your whole point of you being there is to make it better. And sometimes you read something and you know it's not quite working, but you can't figure out what, and you sort of think, oh my goodness, what if I make it worse? What if I don't know what the answer is? And then you have to send it to the author, and you're often not sure how they're going to react.
Yeah.
So it can be quite daunting. But then there is that sort of magic moment. I was working on something the other day, and it was really good, but I was like, something's not working, and I can't tell what it is. And then you have that sort of, it is one of the best things of my job, is that when you have that moment and it clicks into place. And in this example, it was that she'd written it in third person, but actually I was like, I think it would work a lot better in first person. And then the second draft came in, and I was like, yes, it does work better in first person. And I mean, I wish we'd talked about it before, because poor author, it was quite a big job to change.
That is a big job, yeah.
Yeah, and it was something she had not done before, so I think she was quite daunted by it. And we had a few sort of phone calls about it. Yeah, lots of reassuring, but yeah, it sort of worked out really well. So yeah, I think authors talk about how they're scared when they send off their drafts of how people will read it, but editors are also scared of how people will read their edits. But ultimately, I mean, I'm incredibly lucky and work with just the most lovely group of authors who are all very nice. So
Yeah, and
less scary.
And presumably the authors they've been through the submission process of meeting with agents. The agents have worked on edits with them as well, so hopefully they are at least expecting you to just not say, oh, this is the greatest book ever written. No notes.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's very rare that happens. Yeah, but there's always, I think we always have to remind, like you said, they've been through the process. I think for some people, maybe it's that they've been through that process before, and so then to go through it again can be a little bit tiring.
Yeah.
But as we always reassure them, we bought the book because we love it. We wouldn't have, all of us read so many submissions, so many books all the time, and the fact that, if it was up to me, we'd publish all of them. But we obviously can't. So, the fact that we've chosen to publish these books means that they're, we think they're really special.
Yeah. I mean, it makes perfect sense that editors I would be incredibly anxious. I'm anxious in my critique group when I'm thinking, oh, I wanted to send this critique note to someone, and then I'm like, oh, I don't want to hurt their feelings though.
Yeah, and that's the thing, because it's so many feelings. It's such a personal thing, writing, that it is always, like you said, you don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, or you never know where often you do know where the story's coming from, because the authors often talk about why they write things. And I think that's another actually important thing as an editor, is there's, sometimes stories are very personal and reflect experiences that the authors have had. So it's sort of taking them on board and making sure sort of sensitive in how you're responding to that. And if there's a sort of purpose so see, like when Shadows Fall, Sita had a real purpose. That book had a real purpose of sort of encouraging creativity and reaching out to communities that have been forgotten. And so that, as part of the editorial process, we sort of had to keep that very much at the forefront of what we were doing to make sure that it didn't lose that. Yes, there's lots of, when you're editing, there's your brain sort of like buzzing with all these different things.
Yeah, because it's not just the writing doesn't exist like on its own. It comes with the author, and you need to understand. But it's a compromise as well, and you putting some edits down for an author doesn't necessarily mean you must make these changes, or nothing's going to go ahead with this book.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, and that's always something we sort of say is, these are just suggestions, and also, if there's anything that you're not sure about, we can have a phone call about it. And yeah, there's sort of ways around it. But yeah, it's never a case of, unless it's something that's harmful or offensive, which luckily none of my authors write. Unless there's anything really bad, there's always a compromise.
Well, presumably you probably wouldn't have picked up the book if there was something.
Well,
really
bad. That's a very good point. But also in terms of things that, unconscious bias is obviously a thing that everyone's talking about a lot at the moment, and I think we should be, which is why, so we have sensitivity readers for our books to make sure that, and I mean, our authors often ask for that, because, they want to do the best they can for their readers in terms of making sure characters feel true and relatable and accurate, which I think is a really important part of the process. yeah, so yeah, but like I said, if there was anything awful, then we wouldn't have bought it.
Yeah, then there'd be an issue.
Yeah.
And before we get on to the final question, I have to ask: have you ever written or wanted to write something yourself?
Yeah, a lot of people have asked me this recently. And so when I was at SNS, I did do a tiny bit of writing. I wrote Snow Kisses and Hugs and Kisses, which were 2 little board books, which were sort of reuse artwork from Judy Abbott, who's this amazing illustrator. And they were sort of nine rhyming couplets. And it was actually really funny because the first one, I think it was quite a quick process. So we basically just, I mean, it was so saccharine. I remember reading it out to our editorial director and being like, I'm so sorry. But it was quite fun to do. And we sort of just put that in. And then the second one, one of my colleagues edited it, and it was the first time I've been edited, and I did not enjoy it. It's like, Alice, you're wrong. My work is perfect. And obviously she made it so much better. And it's always quite interesting to have that insight, even just on, it was literally 9 rhyming couplets. It was so straightforward, but it did make me appreciate being on the other side of the process. But other than that, I think I don't really, I don't have, there's nothing that I feel like I read so much children's, for work, children's books and outside of work. And I just think, I don't think I'll be able to think up an idea that wasn't completely original, or that was completely original. I think because I've read so much, it would always be informed by something I'd read. And I just, I'm in awe of people who can sit down and write. I'm very happy in my role as editor, just to help to get. It feels like such a privilege to get to work on these amazing books. And I love the relationship that an editor and an author have. It's a really special one, I think, of trust, and you become really, you sort of learn lots about different people. And yeah, no, I'm happy, very happy just editing.
Yeah, I mean, it's so true, but it becomes, I think, a very strong relationship between an editor and author. Obviously, as time goes by, even stronger, because you just have to be very truthful with each other, and it's sort of forced. It's a requirement of the relationship, is that you have to be good at communicating, otherwise it won't work.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, the communication is so key.
Yeah,
and I think something that we want. I think what books do really well, and that we want all our books to do, is sort of empathy. And I think that is also something that in the relationship is quite key, sort of being able to understand what's going on with someone else in order to sort of get the best out of them. And also as an editor, being able, if someone tells you, actually, I don't like this, or I don't agree with this, being able to be like, okay, that's fine. As much as authors don't want to change their work, I think sometimes editors are like, I thought my suggestion was quite good, fine.
But it's all compromise.
Yeah.
That's really, really interesting, and I've learned a lot, I think, from this chat about the role of an editor and what it's like. And that brings us to the final question, which, as always, is, Mattie, if you were stranded on a desert island but could take a single book with you, which one would it be? I
was saying earlier that it's a very difficult question, but a fun one to think about. And I think I would have to take Girl Up by Laura Bates.
Okay.
Which, I mean, Laura Bates, I just think is one of the most fantastic people. She founded the Everyday Sexism Project, and she's written several books. She's incredible. She goes into schools and talks to young people. She is also just completely lovely. She's published, so SNS published her book, so I've met her a few times through that, and she is just wonderful. But Girl Up is my sort of go-to book if I'm ever feeling down or lacking confidence, or if something's happened, because it's just so funny, but also important, I think, and it really speaks to women and young girls. It sort of is all about your confidence and standing up for yourself, and actually knowing what's right, or what you deserve, or how you should be treated. And yeah, I mean, it's like, but I think what she does so brilliantly is that it is just really funny, and so relatable. So I do go back to that book quite often as it is. And I think if I was if I could only have one book, that would be one book that I'd be happy to just keep reading over and over again.
Well, great. Sounds amazing. It's such an incredible talent. I'm always in awe of authors who can be just so funny, but at the same time are making serious points and talking about very deep issues.
Yeah, and I think that's one of Laura's skills, is when you hear her talk, she is so, I mean, she knows, she's just a fountain of facts, and she's always so calm and measured, and she comes up against people who aren't so calm and measured, and she's always, she's just got that real way of getting to the heart of things, and yeah, making things, presenting things in a way that you can completely absorb and relate to, and that are inclusive and funny. And I don't have I could talk about Laura all day, but I won't.
yeah, let's wrap it up before this goes on forever. But a great choice, and it sounds like she's a real inspiration, which is, it's lovely to know that you met your hero and she didn't disappoint.
She did not.
Well, thank you so much, Mattie, for coming on and sharing your experience and your everything that you sort of learned with us and me and everyone listening. It's been really great chatting with you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
And for anyone listening, if you want to keep up with what Mattie's doing, you can follow her on Twitter at Mattie2507, or head over to the Little Tiger website, www.littletiger.co.uk. To make sure you don't miss an episode of this podcast, follow us on Twitter at Right and Wrong UK or on Instagram at Right and Wrong Podcast. Thanks again for coming on and chatting to us, Mattie, and thanks to everyone listening. We'll catch you in the next episode. Thanks for hanging around until the end. If you're interested in starting your own podcast but aren't really sure what that looks like, I can't recommend Zencastr enough. It's so simple to host, record, and download your podcast with, and it even has a built-in transcription AI. It functions entirely in the internet browser, which means all your guests have to do is click on a link and they'll be brought into the conversation. If you click on the link in the description, you'll get 30% off the first 3 months. All you have to do is click on the link in the description. Thanks again for supporting the show, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Now for a limited time, the new $1.99 crispy tender wraps are here at Sonic. Who could deny a crispy chicken tender with bold flavors like hickory barbecue and cheesy Baja? And we can't forget the crisp lettuce and melty cheese to make the perfect bite. Wrap yourself up with some TLC, tender, love, and chicken for only $1.99. Sonic $1.99 crispy tender wraps. Tax not included, limited time only at participating Sonic drive-ins.